Welcome everybody. I'm Matt Dahlhausen. I am on the steering committee for SimBuild 2024, which is happening in May in Denver. I'm a research engineer at the National Renewable Energy Lab, which is also in Denver. Parts of today's session are going to be recorded. They're going to be available on the IBPSA-USA YouTube channel. If you have any issues with the presentation and the audio, you could try calling in by phone, but I think everyone's audio hopefully is working. This is a Zoom meeting, not a webinar, so you are able to unmute and share your camera once we get to the portion that where we do breakout rooms. And I encourage you to do that. So today's session is on planning a small group session for SimBuild. So why small groups? So thinking of information sharing at conferences, there's a few different styles. The most popular one, I think, is just informal one-on-one networking with your peers. This is great because you can tailor what you're talking about to a specific person. You can cut out unnecessary background and context that they already have. You're customizing what you're saying based on their questions and what you're talking about, and that sort of direction can go wherever it leads. One challenge with this is if you have an idea that you're trying to share with lots of people, that can get very repetitive and it's quite slow. Often in one-on-one networking sessions, people are usually only talking to people they know, and it's hard to meet new people or understand what they want to talk about and see common connections. And one other downside is sometimes you get stuck in a conversation with somebody and you want to end the conversation, there's no clear out because there's not a great structure of when that conversation ends. The other style are lecture style presentations. So these are great if you have a speaker that has a practiced presentation. They can give a clear, informative perspective to a bunch of different people at the same time. You can use graphics and other visualizations to help convey a message. One of the downsides of this is often you need to establish a lot of context and background to get everyone on the same page. Not everyone's a great speaker, so sometimes these can be quite slow, boring. I think all of us have been at conferences where you've seen people checking their email during presentations or done so yourself. For presenters, it's difficult to get feedback. The question and answer sessions are usually quite limited to maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and so people have to follow up afterwards. And the main critique I have of lecture style presentations, I think they're often great in conferences, but if it could be a webinar, if you could just give this as a webinar, it's now quite common for us to be able to do that. So I think there's like this added question of, is this really something that we have to present in person? But we're going to have both of these styles at SimBuild this year, both networking and lecture style presentations. But we wanted to add a third style, which are small groups. And the reason for this is that we're trying to encourage a lot more participant interaction. Small groups make it so that people are much more likely to engage in the content of that session and ask questions and contribute. And for the presenters, they can take advantage of audience knowledge. And for some topics, that's really what we want to do, is collect the knowledge of people in the field. One of the small downsides of this particular type of style is that let's say that you have everyone talking about the same topic in different small groups, you might be duplicating a lot of effort or thought. Sometimes that's nice, but sometimes that just is duplicative effort. So I'll talk about the different kinds of small groups that we're going to have at the conference. So the first one is a large room small group format. So in this format structure, you have a group of anywhere between, say, 20 to 80, maybe even 100 participants. You start with a short introduction or presentation to the group, and that might be only 10 minutes long or so. Then you break out into small groups. Each group does their own thing. They talk about some topic, they write notes down, and then optionally at the end, depending on how many groups you have a representative from each group share back to the larger group what they talked about and any sort of main takeaways that they had. There's a few different kinds of ways you can structure this. I've listed them here. So one is a split group discussion. So this is a short presentation, and you have small breakout groups of generally 4 to 8 people, and they're all talking about the same topic. You maybe have a list of questions or things you'd like them to answer and reply back to the larger group, and you have them do so. Another version of this is called divide and conquer, where you start with a problem, then you use some sort of voting tool, and people can provide ideas of how they would break up the problem or different subproblems, and then you have participants vote on those different subproblems. And then each of those subproblems or subtopics becomes a separate group. You can do skits. This is kind of fun, where you give a common scenario or different scenarios to different teams, and they create a scenario to try to convey some sort of idea, perhaps how you would communicate with an architect, for instance, if you're a modeler. There are competitions. So you would break each group into teams, and then you'd have either some sort of shared problem set or some sort of goal or product that they have to develop. And then at the end of the session, you either have a group of judges or you have just a popular vote to see who wins. And then there are also games. The most popular of these is trivia. I'm sure a lot of us have done trivia before. It is the 20th anniversary of IBPSA's conferences, so that might be a nice thing to do. We currently don't have any plans for that, so if you'd like to do that, that would be a nice session. The other style of small group sessions is small room small groups. So these are specifically for 20 people or less. That's to try to keep it intimate and focused. So some examples of these sessions are focus groups. So that's a group of just really only 3 to 8 people. It doesn't work great with much more than that. And they're working on a very specific question or a topic as sort of a small group. There's fishbowl. So this one, you have a bunch of chairs in a circle. You have a few chairs in the middle, and you have one chair in the middle empty. And participants are just having some conversation about a topic. And someone from the outside can come in at any time and join the conversation in that empty chair. And when they do, someone in the middle circle must leave. There's escape room, and I don't know if anyone's done those, but those are quite fun. So you can have a small team working on a series of puzzles, and they're trying to complete that in as little time as possible. For these kinds of small group sessions at SimBuild, we are given the option, if you would like to run a session multiple times, you can do that. So that would probably be true for an escape room. Then office hours. This is perhaps really focused on people that are, say, giving keynotes, or there's a lot of people at the conference that want to talk to them. So let's say you're managing the BTO or the building simulation portfolio at the Building Technologies office, then that might be nice to, if you know a lot of people are going to want to talk to you, have an office hours where everyone can get together and you can be having one-on-one conversations, and other people might have wanted to ask you the same question, but if they're there and they hear you talking with someone else and answering that same question, then that can save you a lot of time in the conference. So I think this will be quite good for keynote speakers and for other people that are, say, funders of a lot of work, or academic researchers that have large research programs. So we are going to do our own sort of small group thing right now, where we are going to just come up with some ideas. So I think we have 8 participants here, so I'll break us up into 3 separate groups. We're going to give 15 minutes, and I would like your group to come up with 3 small group session ideas for SimBuild. These are just rough ideas. You can add more details later. I'd like you to include the name, the format, and a brief description. And I have the slides below. I have a space for you to put your ideas. I'm going to drop a link in chat. This is a link to these Google Slides that I'm sharing right now. And on the prior or the subsequent pages, you'll see different slides. We'll see breakout group 1, 2, or 3. So for your breakout group number, I'd like you to put your 3 ideas there. And I have a list of seed ideas if you're just getting stuck and you need to put something in. Each group's going to share your ideas. So we're going to start with breakout group number 1. If one of you want to unmute and...
Yeah, I can talk about this.
Sorry, struggling with my mute button. Go ahead, Eric. I'll keep typing.
Yeah, we had we got to 3. The last one is a little rushed, but the first idea is kind of a project process brainstorm. For the format, we thought focus group initially, but then I really like the idea of escape rooms. I think it'd be a lot of work maybe to set this up, and actually I think maybe the second one is perhaps better for escape room. But so let's think about focus group for this one. For the description, it'd be like presenting a problem that's, that would be common for energy modelers to get with like really real world constraints, both in terms of information availability and perhaps like team member reliability or things like that. And then the group would share ideas around workflow, tools, data sources, just sort of general best practices for how they would address that. And then with the idea of sparking some, conversations around or sharing about, what individuals' experiences around those workflows or data sources. Data sources is one that we took to the second one, which was not so much fleshed out.
Can you refresh it all, Matt? Because I did add more text.
Yeah, let me see if I can.
There we go. That's better.
Okay,
thanks.
I'll keep it in this.
Oh, nice. Thanks, Craig. Yeah, so this one we had more of an escape room. I like the sort of puzzle idea with, where to find good sources of input data or resources for the modeling problems that we might experience. And then third, this was sort of Craig's, and maybe I'll let Craig talk about it.
Right. This is like my soapbox issue lately. Basically like it's something I've been chewing on for a while of like we're always relying on sort of decades old performance curves to do heat pumps, and likewise a lot of refrigeration, like commercial refrigeration system analysis tools, are pretty outdated and don't have modern components and arrangements. And so I would love to have sort of like a bunch of people work on that problem, and like how do we come up with a better sort of approach to modeling heat pumps when we've got industrial heat pumps coming out and like the industry's moving faster than we can keep up analytically, right?
Yep. Very cool.
I'll stop.
Okay. I think group 2 might still be writing some things down, so I'm going to jump to group 3. Anna, would you like to share ideas you came up with?
Sure. We also liked the idea of an escape room. So we talked about, or maybe this could be a team competition, but could we give, like, maybe have some kind of predefined like hourly outputs from a model or something, and part of the task is to take that and translate it into carbon emissions, or like other like embodied carbon or refrigerant for the building, and sort of have that be like something each group in the escape room solves, and then you post the results with like a leaderboard. So maybe it's a timed activity, and then you can kind of see how other people or other groups solved it. I think the escape room seems like that could be either, an individual working on the problem alone, or you could kind of divide it up into, like, you could have the same problem and then split it up into components. So that was the example of like, all of the carbon emissions aspect of a building, not just the energy use, but also refrigerant and embodied carbon, and you could assign that to different groups. So that was one idea. We talked about a skit, so a skit called Sticker Shock, where you could kind of role play a meeting where you talk about different energy efficiency measures and their high first cost, and how to maybe communicate that to the owner or the project team in a way that helps either justify that sticker shock or provide some ways to lessen the blow. That's maybe a little violent, but make that easier. And then the last one, I think looking at like maybe a divide and conquer activity, where you kind of have a problem and you split it up between a bunch of small groups, specifically looking at, how do you translate kind of infiltration, or how do you maintain infiltration performance, I guess. So, there's assumptions made in the model, but what happens to that in terms of, the quality of the building envelope construction, and how do you help like translate that assumption into, making sure that that's actually the project infiltration. So it's kind of the last idea.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing all those. Now we'll head back to group 2. Hopefully you've got a chance to I see there's anonymous alligator is still writing some thoughts out.
Well, I can start.
Great.
With the first one. So for those of you who don't know, I'm on the committee for IBPSA-MIXAs, and so I've been thinking quite a bit about submitting a session. So the one idea that we had was a never have I ever sort of game. If you're familiar with it, it is traditionally a drinking game, but we will not be providing alcohol for this one. And it is, you will say statements like, never have I ever jumped out of an airplane. And if you have, then you take a drink. Or in this instance, we will be crafting never have I ever statements around building science in general. So things like, never have I ever blamed an architect for a problem on a drawing. And if you have, then you are out of the game. But if you have not, then you stay in the game. Or another statement, never have I ever modeled infiltration at 0. And so these groups are scattered around the room, and everyone has the same set of cards. And at the end, groups are narrowed down to the person who's answered the most. So the most never have I ever statements. They're typically maybe either a person who is not familiar with the kind of questions that we have, or who is very fresh in the industry, or even a student. And then the one who has answered the least, meaning they've done all those things. Sorry, there's a lot of double negatives. Are more experienced engineers, and we hope to have like a panel with our most answered people. They're like kind of their expert panel, talking about what they do, how they got there, tips and tricks. And we're hoping that this encourages a lot of discussion around what's on the cards and modeling practices, and give people who are fresh in the industry a perspective on what can be done, and for people who are more seasoned in the industry to share their collective experience. And then I'll let Yuyan talk about his idea for the second one.
Hey everyone, my idea is around developing a process-centric project model. What it means is, I guess the idea is coming from a real-world design or consulting experiences. Like, we deliver building performance project at early stage to SD and DD and later CD phase. But I mean, all the information around like what's a EOI at this stage, what ECM you have analyzed, all these information are reside in like group emails or like meeting notes or some Teams chat, and there's lack of a standardized structure to store all these information and to make sure everybody is accountable. And also to make sure like to keep tracking of what we have gone through. And I think as a society or community, like collectively developing such a delivery process model would be beneficial for a lot of reasons. Like for design firms, they can benefit a lot from this to streamlining their internal process. And it also can be a foundation for some later stage like web app that to helping building performance teams to manage their deliverable process.
Cool.
So that's basically my idea.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that could be a useful discussion to have with different teams. Okay, thanks for sharing all those ideas. So next I'm going to move to some short tips and tricks on how you do moderating for small group sessions. So very quickly, some tips. When you're doing an intro presentation and setting the stage, try to keep that short, less than 10 minutes. I don't want people necessarily submitting things where it's like half an hour of intro and then there's not enough time for the small groups to do their small group thing. I recommend that you give groups a task and a time limit for that task. And once you do that, give them a reminder about 2 to 3 minutes before the time limit is up to keep them on track. If it's a longer set of time, like if it's 20 minutes or longer, maybe give them a halfway notification that encourages them to speed things up. For small groups that are composed of 5 or more people, I recommend having each group select a note taker or a person who will be responsible for reporting back. If you do plan to have small groups share back to the larger group, make sure you allocate enough time to do that. For really quick things, you could set a time limit like just 30 seconds or 60 seconds, or maybe even 90 seconds per group, and then factor that in when you're sort of planning the session. And then plan for variant numbers of participants. So if you have 20 people in a session, that share back time might not take very long, but if you have 80 people and you have, say, 10 or 12 different groups, that might be a significant portion of the session length. So consider that when you're planning the format for the session. You can limit your session to a fixed number of attendees. That is an option, and in your proposal, you can write a capacity if you think that the session will work with more than a fixed amount. Just really quickly, some tools and resources you might need. So easels, markers, paper, that's probably very typical for any sort of small group thing, just to record notes, or if they're doing some sort of diagrams, or just writing down and collecting thoughts, that might be a nice thing to have. There's other tools you can use at the very start. So specifically for the divide and conquer one, you might want people to submit ideas, and then those are voted on by the larger group. So Mentimeter is a tool that can do that, and Slido is a tool that can do that as well. And they have free versions of those, so I'd recommend that. So we have around 20 minutes left. I'd like to take maybe the next 10 minutes to go back into our breakout groups. I'd like you to pick one of your small group session ideas and expand it out. So the things that you're going to want to include are narrow in on the format. So an outline, just the times, like is it a 30-minute or a 60-minute session, and then break out the different sort of sections of how you do it. List any props or resources that would be required, and then give a more thorough description of your idea.
I did the note. This is all, it's like me taking notes from what Eric says. So he spoke last time, so I'll do my best this time. So we took the project process idea and like actually just made that into an escape room idea, with the idea, the overall concept being like set up a drawing set or a project problem that is like intentionally ambiguous in terms of a lot of the details involved, and then basically the stage gates for escaping then are to like be able to successfully fill in the blanks within some, I don't know, it's a little bit harder to find like what successfully means, but that was, I mean, I think this seemed pretty fun. And so it's interpreting drawings is a big part of it. Trying to find different sources, like allow the use of the internet so people can do searches and things in terms of like be creative and sort of how you solve filling in the gaps in the information. And then just then the rest of this is kind of brainstorming some ideas around like, we could have HVAC and sort of sequences of operations be like, maybe that's a separate, there could even be like tracks, like this group has got to solve the sort of forum shell track, and this group has to solve the HVAC operations track and something to that effect. So, but essentially, and then you come back, people can escape, and then you still can come back with, there may be 3 different paths, right, that got you out based on the data sources and process that you used, which would just be interesting to compare notes.
Yeah, that's really fun. I like that. Yeah, it's nice with escape rooms to have parallel paths, and then people need to solve all of them to be able to come to a final solution. So yeah, that's great. Awesome. Okay, we'll go to 3 again. And if you want to share that.
Sure. So I think this was, again, kind of an escape room, so similar to group 1. But the idea was to get ChatGPT to code for you. So you have like a little booth that's set up with some simulation outputs and ChatGPT, and then you work with ChatGPT to maybe reformat a file, apply hourly emissions factors, and then answer a couple questions. And it would come with kind of a leaderboard, so you could see like what the, kind of what other people, like the time it took them to solve the problem, or maybe their solutions or something. And this would be for more of one to two person setup. So as opposed to like a group, it's kind of an individual.
Sweet, thanks. Yeah, that'd be kind of a fun piece to have there. And then group 2, never have I ever. This is a really fun idea.
Okay, so the cards with the statements on it will be the materials that we'll prepare beforehand. And basically we'll have winners, quote unquote, at each table, the last person sitting. And we'll be joining the other people who are last sitting at their table to be kind of interviewed by the moderators, to maybe have new cards to discuss. And then the people who are standing, who have done the most on the cards, will be able to we'll discuss each of the cards one by one, and kind of our expert panel. So hopefully it's interactive at the table, but also we come back together as a large group at the end to kind of interview one another, to talk about some modeling processes and perhaps misconceptions.
That's really fun. Excellent. Okay, well, thanks everyone for coming up with all the great ideas. Hopefully this will give you something to format and put into a submission. So just a note that the submissions are due Friday. So you can check the SimBuild 2024 website for all the latest updates and submit your program ideas and presentations and proposals. And if there's, I guess for people that are watching on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you also want to submit a proposal, please do that. If you have any follow-ups, you can reach out to us at admin@IBPSA-US.
I have a question. So where are these activities being slotted to into the agenda? Are we competing against technical talks? Are we competing against coffee breaks?
Yeah, so we have different sort of rooms for the conference where we have some presentations. We're going to have one room that's dedicated to small group sessions, and these will be competed against the non-paper presentation sessions, but we really want to have small group sessions. So I think small group sessions are likely going to be much more likely to get accepted than a generic 15-minute presentation, and we're really trying to encourage those. I think as it is, we're unlikely to get enough small group session proposals. So if you want to commit to your things, and we're happy to help out to develop a proposal and give you resources to help make that a reality. But as it stands, I think we're mostly going to accept most, if not all, of the small group session proposals that we get.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And you're pretty slick having us like actually develop the proposal here as part of this meeting. I like fully appreciate.
That is the goal.
Pull that off.
Yes, we need more small group session proposals. So that was the entire intent of today. So
awesome. Well done.
Great. Okay, well, thanks everyone, and I look forward to reading your proposals.